wanted to bounce off what Alison said about the UN cluster meetings. I mean, I can't really speak to what's happening in that region on that, but I think the whole idea of participation and bringing civil society into UN meetings is something I can maybe talk a bit about from our level. I mean, I think there's a couple of issues here, and it's a really interesting time because we're kind of seeing this perfect storm of everything coming together between ICT, youth issues, employment, and we at the UN, I mean everywhere, I guess at national government level, we're seeing a lot of governments come up to us and say, okay, we really need to get our hands into youth issues. Youth is such a priority right now. I mean, things are kicking off in the MENA region, Greece, all across Europe. Youth unemployment's at a phenomenally high level. So there are lots of different issues, whether it be we want a job or we want our voice heard more. There's just so much happening. And then you combine that with all these newer forms of technology where, young people have always been active. It's not like young people have never been active before. They've always been great advocates for their own rights, but now we're hearing it more and more. And more on an individual basis as well, so yet less through, say, youth organisations and more of this kind of dual process. So there are those two things I think that we're kind of really cognizant of at the moment. So for us, I don't want to get too UN-y on all this, but some of you already know that in January this year, the Secretary General announced that youth was going to be a priority for him for his next 5 years of term when he was re-elected in. And what our office at the UN level in New York is doing is implementing two of his initiatives. One of them is there'll be an appointment of a special advisor to the Secretary General on Youth, which sounds all a bit wordy, but is actually quite a symbolic move. And also there's going to be a system-wide action plan on youth issues across the UN, which means that, we've all these UN agencies and funds. We've got UNDP, UN Habitat, UNICEF, UN headquarters in New York, and we're all kind of working together, but also kind of in different spheres with different focus. So the idea of this is to really get all these UN agencies together and come up with a system-wide action plan that will really focus on coordination and collaboration of youth issues across the board. So they're kind of the main things that we're focused on at the moment. And a big part of that is how do we get, while we're developing these things, how do we make sure that young people are involved and that we hear about what young people want? So at the moment we're going through the different stages, but we're really using social media and our networks in trying to engage young people. So we'll have an e-consultation and saying, okay, we're developing this system-wide action plan. What is it you think is a priority? What do you want the UN to do about it? And what do you as a young person want to do about it as well? Because it's a two-way process, or even a multi-way process. So there's a lot of that going on at the moment. And I know we're also trying to get to grips, and it's interesting to see within the office who's better managing the social media, and it's usually our younger interns that are coming in as opposed to the senior staff. But that's a bit age bias of me.
No, but Elizabeth, that's exactly in some ways what, Sarah, you were talking about. Right here you have the challenge of how do you build capacity on both sides. Yeah. Right here you are, you want this to happen. You're inviting it. Mm-hmm. Now, how do you make sure that we aren't raising expectations like you were speaking of, sir? Where then, okay, I spoke, have I been heard? How do I know I've been heard? And what difference does my speaking and your hearing actually make?
Exactly, and I think at the UN we can recognize that as a challenge. I know that tomorrow or later we're going to hear more about the Rio process. The Rio process was a really open process to civil society, one of the more open processes the UN has had. Young people and civil society are still quite frustrated with the outcomes of that process. So, there is I think we're certainly trying. It's not anywhere near perfect yet. So there are processes. Yeah, how do we make that into a reality? I know that for our next International Day of Youth, the focus will be on building partnerships with and for youth. And our idea is, okay, what as the UN can we do for you, and how can we work with you? And that's the more important focus. It's not just you're a young person, employment's an issue, let's try and fix youth employment. It's you're a young person, come tell us how we can help better facilitate your skills and capacity building and better equip you for the employment market or getting a job. So, they're just some of the, we could talk forever, I suppose, as could everybody here. There's so much interesting work to learn from. But I think just to kind of say it is certainly something that member states and the UN is becoming acutely aware of and is really trying to zone in. I mean, one thing that came up in the Rio document and in an outcome document to the International Year of Youth was a global employment strategy for youth. So these are things that are coming up again and again, and it's quite interesting.
Oh yeah.
With really great love and respect.